Welcome to the PitchVision Academy Cricket Show. It's my favourite half an hour of the week. A chance to learn about improving your game or perhaps improving the game of others. My name's David Hinchliffe. I look after things. And helping me for the next half an hour or so is the Director of Cricket Coaching at Millfield School. It's Mark Garaway. Hello, Gareth. How are you?
I'm very well, yeah. All good, thank you.
Marvellous news. We've been working hard in the indoor school already, getting people to come along and do their winter work, which is all encouraging at club level when people tend to disappear for a few months, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. It's enthusiastic players there, mate.
One of the things that we've been looking at this year is trying to get a bit more pace out of some of our bowlers, even though they bowl at a decent club league anyway. Been trying to work ways of increasing pace, and that got me thinking about how that side of coaching has changed. It's something we talk about a lot because it's a question that we're asked a lot. And I was thinking, over the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years, coaching fast bowling seems to have changed quite a lot, and it seems to have changed quite a lot both from the scientific research side of things and also from the coaching side of things. So Gareth, what if you were to summarise how things have changed over the last few years when it comes to getting more pace out of your bowlers, how would you sum it up?
Well, I'd sum it up in firstly strength and conditioning is been the biggest thing for us really, and that's across the board, but probably the area that has developed most significantly from a strength and conditioning point of view is fast bowling, because people have recognised that the forces that go through the body are most significant in fast bowling than any other discipline that we have on the cricket field. So as a result of that, the body needs to be more physically robust and ready to use force to get the ball down the other end as quickly as possible. So that would be the starting point for me, and then obviously more understanding about those forces and how we can use those forces has led to some technical awareness building for all coaches, I think, not just the ones that are specialist bowling coaches, fast bowling coaches, but also the ones like myself that are just interested in helping people to get better as a fast bowler as well. So the science has been significant, both in strength and conditioning, but also then how we use forces, how we absorb them, how we transfer them, how we project those into the back of a cricket ball to make it get down the other end with a bit of heat on it.
So how would a lot of stuff, there's a lot of talk now, and there has been for a few years, I suppose now, around sort of that transition between kind of gym fitness and speed and power that you get when you're bowling and using medicine balls and heavy ball bowling and all that kind of thing. So, and that's something that we've experimented with as well with some of our bowlers to quite good success, even though it's not been a particularly consistent program. It's been something that people have tried on and off, and it's still worked pretty well. I would say probably that's the biggest change that I've seen certainly in the last couple of years, is that idea that it's all very well going to the gym, but if you go to the gym and you lift a few weights and you run on the treadmill for 20 minutes, then that's not going to have as good a crossover onto your bowling pace as doing stuff in the gym and then also working on those power areas like throwing a medicine ball.
Yeah, because what you're getting used to when you're throwing a medicine ball is you're getting used to moving something quickly, which is a ball, aren't you? So you get your body into positions which allows you to produce that power. And I think whether you're throwing a medicine ball for fast bowling, or throwing a medicine ball for power hitting, or you're throwing a medicine ball for getting your throwing velocity up, they're exactly the same principles, particularly on the bottom half of the body, that we're looking to try and get when we bowl as well. They're great drills, because not only are you pushing something fast and getting something thrown away from you quickly, which is obviously something that you're trying to do when you're bowling fast, but also that the positions that we get that best result from are with that sort of pyramid at the bottom of the body, where you've got that front leg towards braced or braced with a little bit of flexion in there, and you've got that back leg bent, which is something that we see see in reverse quite often when people aren't strong enough to be able to withstand the forces of somebody running up, jumping and then bowling as fast as they can down the other end, where we see the front leg bend. So getting into those positions in a throwing thing is really good from a transferability into then the bowling action, and we're seeing some amazing results in that and some amazing transfer in that without too much technical intervention, which is really exciting as well, because then it's the body is implicitly learning those things, isn't it, rather than having it told all of the time.
Is it something that you think has come to heights, that idea of bowling faster? Do you think it's come to heights in recent years, say 10, 15 years ago? Is it something that people were trying to do actively, or did they think, well, as long as I get my bowling action right, then I'm going to be able to bowl as fast as I'm going to be able to bowl? Or it seems to me that it's become a lot more focused on bowling fast than it used to be. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I do think it's the case, and I think it's because perception of watching the game, particularly now we've got numbers behind every ball on international cricket, is that we haven't got as many bowlers bowling as fast as we used to have. And a lot of that is down to workload, because there's more cricket being played throughout the year, which then obviously puts a lot of pressure on people to be able to deliver their fastest deliveries day in, day out and across different formats. So yeah, there has been more emphasis on it because people, I don't think it's always a conscious decision that people slow down, but there's definitely a decision that the body makes along the lines that if I'm going to maintain myself over the course of a 6-month season, which then goes into another 6-month season, over the winter at the top level, then I'm not going to be able to produce those top levels of velocity. And I think we see it in most bowlers, really. And then the only ones that I would say are the guys who are nailing high speeds on a regular basis are probably the guys that have decided that they're not going to play a certain format of the game at the top level. Because they're looking after their bodies. So you will see the likes of Johnson, and you will see the likes of Tate and those guys producing high levels of velocity every time they bowl, because they are having those rest gaps, they are able to recover, they are able to practice specifically to bowl incredibly quickly the whole time, because of the decisions they've made in their career, really. But it's very difficult for somebody like a Jimmy Anderson or a Dale Steyn to be able to sustain that top level pace throughout the year across all of the formats that they play. For Jimmy it's predominantly Test match cricket, but for somebody like Dale Steyn, he's still performing in all three. But we do see them dropping their paces to certain situations, try and manage themselves through. It's a tough thing to do with the volume of cricket, and particularly the high intensity level of cricket that there is now, and we're still waiting for somebody to be able to run up and bowl at 90 plus miles an hour every single time they bowl across all of the formats, and I think that's one of the aims that we've all got to have as cricket coaches.
Okay, let's wrap up this section with a little piece of news from PitchVision, and it's good news. We are running a sale on a PitchVision 1 system, which of course is the system which both you and I use regularly, Gareth, and at the moment they are half their normal price as part of our Diwali offer sale. So we're going to run that from now, that when you're listening to this, through to the 7th of November 2016. Head over to pitchvision.com/Diwali sale and you'll get all the information on how to get your discount. Now it's time to answer a couple of questions that have been sent in to the PitchVision Academy Cricket Show by listeners to the show, or perhaps readers to the PitchVision website. How it works is we answer a couple of questions, and then whichever question we decide is the best one of the week, it wins a prize, which is an online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com. And you can send your questions into us for future shows by emailing coach@pitchvision.com. And Matt is the first person who sent in a question this week. And Matt says, how do you go about changing the mindset of players in club training, moving away from trying to whack it in nets to structured, purposeful training? This is something actually that I've gone through in the last couple of years. But Gareth, you've got some experience at working with club level players as well, so I'd be interested in getting your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty easy one if you go into a club, say, that hasn't had the level of success that it's wanted to have over the years. I don't think it's quite so easy if you're in a club environment where you generally win stuff every year. Because, why change it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it type approach is fairly prevalent. So I've been lucky that the clubs that I've worked with have had aspirations to get significantly better in a shortish period of time, which means that they are more open, I suppose, to me coming in and going, well, let's have a go at it this way, because at the moment you're just going about that practice that Matt describes in his question, which is just going out there and having a whack and it not being particularly structured. So as long as there's a desire, I suppose, to get better, then you can't really fail by having a different approach. To me, themes are really important because a theme is something that everybody can relate to fairly quickly. If you put a theme on it, right, for the next 2 weeks we're going to be practicing 2020 cricket. We're going to go with 3 sections of a game. This is the situation. These are the scenarios. This is how we're looking to play, and this is how we're going to monitor effectiveness and success within that. Then people will relate to that because everybody's been in those types of game situations. Everybody has played enough cricket to know that that's the structure, or seen enough cricket to know that those things tend to happen in matches. So that would be my starting point. Or you might have a theme, for example, an alternative theme, which we're actually going to have a couple of weeks into when we get back to school, which is a trying something different theme, and that's linked to trying to expand your skills, really. So you can imagine that there's a bowler who's really good at hitting length, who seams it about quite a lot, but has struggled maybe when people have started to whack it a little bit in terms of their variation of Yorkers or slower balls, that they might pick 2 balls, that they're going to bowl every single ball of that session is going to be one of those 2 balls, just to try and get that right. And equally, you might have a batter at the other end who's looking to try and practice their power hitting, because that's an area of the game that's being developed at the moment, and people are just sampling that for the first time. So they'd be putting their power hitting against somebody who's looking to practice their Yorkers and their slow balls. Absolutely perfect. So I quite like the doing something different theme, which is really open, but all you get people to do on a whiteboard is to write down what they're doing something different is, and then you just pair up people to go against each other in nets, for example, where the 2 things that they're looking to pair up are relatively compatible. It just changes it from people running up and bowling and people running, standing there and waiting for the ball and having a whack, which is something that we see a lot in practice. The other thing as well is to maybe have 2 nets available for people to have competition against each other, batters against bowler, and then another net, if you've got the space, where that is about technical development, and that can be anything that anybody wants to take into there, which could be tennis ball based, or it could be throwdown based, whatever the case may be, and you get people paired up, ready to do their batting for 10 minutes in there, 5 minutes on each person, practicing the skill that they want to do. Then they go into the net and play against bowlers, and you just keep siphoning people through that. On the outside of a net, you could have maybe a crazy catch down, you could maybe have a catch it board or somebody hitting, so you've got 3 or 4 people practicing their fielding on outside, or maybe some stumps outside of the net that they're throwing into, and within a very small space you can actually create quite a structured practice which goes towards a theme of 2020 cricket, or saving more runs in the first 6 overs of a 2020, or whatever it wants to be, whatever is linked to the game of cricket that you're looking to try and improve. But having that overall theme and structure is really beneficial, and certainly from a personal point of view, it's never failed to get results on Saturdays, after a few weeks of getting used to this way of working.
Yeah, knowing how people respond to different sort of motivations, ways of motivating is a really crucial factor for me, because no matter how well you plan something out and how well intentioned most people are, you're always going to get a little bit of conflict from some people who would say, well, this is not the way that I like to prepare. Why should I change anything? And as you say, Gary, if someone's doing well under that situation, then you can get that pushback from people, and you can get people saying, I don't want to do it like that. And it's about, for me anyway, it's about knowing what works best with different people and trying to integrate everything in as much as possible, and knowing that there'll always be some people who love it and engage with it, and there'll always be some people who can't engage with the thing that you're trying to do straight away. And you need to, it's your job as a coach to find out what does engage them and what does get them going and what fires them up to start improving. And I feel like that's about, you don't have to do anything special. You don't have to have long meetings with people. It's about getting to know people and understanding what they like and what they don't like, and then trying to bring it all together as a whole, and showing them that doing things in a slightly different way sometimes is going to work for them. And if they try it, you never know what level of success they're going to get. So I think personalisation is probably the key thing for me.
And it is. It's not always achievable, though, personalisation, when you're trying to change a culture around practice. Because the last thing you want to be doing is for somebody to hold that culture back through ignorance, really. So I'd be quite keen to, you sort of know, don't you, who your sticklers in the mud are going to be. I mean, they normally stick out a little bit. So I'd want to do a bit of homework on them. I'd want to have a look at what their way of preparing actually provides them, what it gives them, what it gives the team. You know, so if their way of preparing, which is different to the way that you're looking to get people to be a bit more structured, gives them about an average of 80 plus. Then I would be surprised if there isn't something in the way that they structure their practice which is very disciplined and organised and structured. And so you're not actually far off, even though you might be coming in with this idea of we'll have a theme. Actually, some of the things that person is doing in their practice to enable them to average 80 or 70 on a Saturday, there's got to be some synergy there, isn't there? You know, otherwise he wouldn't be performing on a Saturday, because I've still yet to see anybody who practices like an absolute clown go out and be the best player in the league. You know, I've never seen it. And I doubt whether I'll ever see it. And if I do see it, then I'll probably say to that person, "That's fantastic." But just think where you could be playing if you did apply yourself a little bit more in your practice, because you're probably playing 3 or 4 levels beneath yourself. So there's always synergy in that. And then equally, if that person isn't averaging 70, and in fact they're averaging 25 or 30 on a Saturday as a batter, or they're averaging 40 with the ball, then probably you can go up to them and say, well, you know, it's great that you've always practiced like this, but, you know, let's look over the last couple of seasons. Your performance levels for the number that you're batting, or for the number that you're bowling, or for the opportunity that you're getting, you're actually not delivering by practicing in that way. So why don't you come with me for 3 weeks? On the 4th week, it's practice however you want day. All right, and then you can go back to doing that. But for 3 weeks, let's give it a go. Let's give it a crack, and let's see what the result is at the end of that. And if your results have got even worse from where they are, then fine. On that 4th week, you practice in the way you are, and then we'll see how we go from there. But you know, I always think, do your homework on people, get their numbers, because the numbers are there. And whilst people might disagree with stats, it gives you a fantastic starting point if somebody is challenging you from a limiting belief point of view, and a lot of those limiting beliefs can be nipped in the bud fairly quickly, and all of a sudden you'll have an advocate on board rather than somebody who's going to be the corridor conversationalist who's trying to detract from what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and you're looking out for those moments where someone is saying, you know, I'm not doing as well as I normally do this year, or things like that, you know, where it's an offhand comment, but it gives you a chance to engage them in that conversation and say, okay, well, if you're not doing as well as normal, what can we do differently to get you back to where you think you should be? Because, you know, most people think if they're out of form, they think it's a matter of, you know, well, I'm not performing at my best, but I can get back there. So if you start with that principle of saying, well, okay, well, let's get you back there, right? How about we try this? And as you say, Gareth, it's an easier road than if someone is averaging 100 with the bat and 15 with the ball.
It certainly is.
Next question is from Trevor. And Trevor says, a lot of young cricketers have problems with balance while batting. Do you have any drills to improve this? Maybe we want to start with what that actually means, balance. It's one of those words, isn't it? That sounds good. We need to really think about what it actually means. So what does balance while batting mean to you, Gareth?
Well, I think most batters that I see that are doing really well are balanced at point of release. Now, that balance doesn't need to be static balance. It doesn't need to be grounded balance necessarily. It can be dynamic balance, and we see quite a lot of that in world cricket. People having a late trigger. So at point of ball release, they might be just slightly moving, with one of the feet. We've seen that a lot with players in the subcontinent on the front foot, and we see it a lot in players on the back foot in some of the places in the world that the ball bounces a little bit more. But generally, you want to be balanced. You want to be in a position where you can move from that stance at point of release into the place where you want to make contact with the ball. So balance for me is getting in that position before, as the bowler's running in. It's important that we are balanced, that we can stand there, that we're comfortable, that we can see everything that we're trying to see. And then when if we're facing a fast bowler, we might want to trigger a little bit and get our body going, get our neuromuscular system firing a little bit, get our central nervous system firing a little bit, which is what that trigger is all about. But then we want to make sure that we're in a balanced position at point of release to be able to move into the ball. So I would get people to do a lot of practice about what that looks like before the ball's released and as the ball's released, by doing a bit of visualisation, getting them in front of a mirror, getting them to visualise somebody coming in to bowl at them, and just getting used to their foot patterning. And that can be the same for spin as well, because quite a lot of people have a slight front foot motion, whether it be a floating foot or whether it be a press, as Duncan Fletcher used to call it, going towards the line of a ball. And again, getting used to those timings and getting used to being balanced in those timings is crucial. And sometimes the worst place you can do that is actually by facing the bowler in nets. You want to be practicing that outside of it. You see people like skiers, for example, are really good at doing their visualisation. You see a skier before they do their run in a downhill or a slalom race, and they'll have their eyes closed and they'll be motioning. You can see them actually motioning through the gates as they're going down, and they're reliving it. And I think in cricket we can do a bit more of that, really. Rather than just expect to face a bowler and be in those balanced positions that you're talking about here, Trevor. And then obviously at point of contact we want to be balanced. And so what impacts upon balance? Well, where our centre of gravity in relation to our base impacts upon our balance. So if I'm playing a drive shot and my head, my torso and my centre of gravity are beyond the width of my base to the offside, then obviously there's only one way I'm going, which is going to the offside. And we see that a lot, don't we, where people fall over the ball, I suppose, and end up having to play around themselves. So if you are in a position at point of contact where your centre of gravity, which is pretty much around the belly button, slightly lower than your belly button, if you can get that centre of gravity over the top of your base, then you are going to be balanced. And then the other element which negates balance a little bit is width of stride. So if you're narrow, for example, you'll often lose stability. So if you're playing a front foot drive, for example, you step into the ball and you haven't covered enough ground with your feet, then often your centre of gravity will go beyond your base in a forward motion, and then you will lose balance as a consequence. So it's about finding your width of base when you're trying to hit the ball, which is most appropriate to you, and making sure that your centre of gravity is over the top of that rather than being outside of it. So ultimately that is balance when it comes to striking a cricket ball.
Yeah, it helps to break it down, doesn't it? Especially, I guess, with younger guys, to break it down and get the more difficult part out the way first and then work backwards. That classic idea of chaining or reverse chaining, I suppose, where you start at the end and then you work your way backwards. So a simple drill would be to start in that, what I've heard of called the finished position or the engaged position, where you've taken that stride and then you hit the ball and then you hit the ball again and you hit the ball again, and you don't come out of that position. And then when you feel like you've got that correct position for you and balance, then you can go back to your stance and do it from there. And with the easier feed, so the easier the feed, the easier it is to establish that centre of gravity and that point that works for you. and then you can build up the difficulty of the feed as you go along as well.
And that's a great drill to do. Not everybody likes those drills, but it's a great drill to do with, around 50% of the population would love that, because they'd get that feeling. They'd be able to associate with the sensations of having their weight in the right place, having their base at the right width, and being able to strike back. And that reverse chaining method works fantastically well with many players that I work with presently. Equally though, there'll be some players that like motion, that they like to feel that they're falling or moving into a balanced position, who would find that really quite a restrictive practice. And actually, when you then take them out of that reverse training methodology and you feed the next ball in, it would almost seem as if they'd never done the drill in the first place, which can be frustrating from a coaching point of view. And I think we've all been there, that when we've done a drill, a reverse chaining drill, and we've worked on it for ages, and then you chuck them an open ball and then they just revert back to the same thing that they've been doing before. And often those guys were ones who need to understand more about balance before they move to the ball, because they were probably off balance when they were at point of release, which then causes them to be off balance when they get to point of contact. So then you'd work more on that being balanced at point of release thing. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by holding onto the ball is a really good way, and seeing whether they can maintain balance, or at least fall into a straight direction rather than fall either way off to the offside or to the leg side, is a really good one. And that was a drill that coaches down the years used to do with me a lot when they were giving me throwdowns. They'd just hold on to the ball and see what I did. And Desmond Haynes did that with me heaps, and he taught me through doing that drill what balance was to me and where I needed to be. So you've got reverse chaining for those guys that quite like to be static and quite like to repeat and get that feel from doing it from the position of ball strike and then taking it back into motion. And then equally you've got the guys who are a bit more like me, I suppose, that needed to do it in a more sort of normal way, a functional way, but with the bowler or the thrower or the coach holding on to the ball just to check where you are at point of release, as opposed to checking you are at point of contact. Because if you're not comfortable at point of release for these guys, then they're likely to be out of sync when they come to hitting the ball as well. And it's
common for this phrase of falling away, where the head is not in the centre when you're looking straight on, and that's what a lot of people say would give to balance. And you mentioned there that it's not always side to side balance that's the thing. It can be forwards and backwards as well.
Yeah, and that width of stance is a classic one, isn't it? Where we see people go with a short stride when they play forward, particularly when the ball's sort of straightish, actually, when their feet hardly move and they end up hitting and then having to take one or two steps to recover their balance. We see that a lot, and that's a loss of balance, as well as it being to the offside, which is probably the most common one, where people feel that their head, hands and feet are outside the line of the body.
And people used to talk about this phrase stable base. That seems to have gone a little bit out of phrasing, because maybe it doesn't give the right message to people. Is that something that you use still, a stable base, or are you cautious with that kind of terminology?
Again, I want to try and put that terminology into the right person, really. So I've got a guy that I've just picked up who's having a stable base at point of release, having a stable base at point of contact, are two massive terms that I use for him. But he's somebody who generally needs to feel the floor, and those guys are the ones who have more flexion in their legs and in their batting stance. So somebody like Kevin Peterson, who in fact was very good at striking the ball off one leg, as many will remember. The starting point for his batting was very much having a real good grounding with his feet and his stance and in his trigger movements, which then enabled his body to unwind in the way that it wanted to. Very similar to this lad. He needs to feel the floor under his feet, have a real good connection with it to then be able to push into the right areas. So stable base is really important for me, particularly with guys that need to feel the ground. Whereas somebody like, I'm trying to think, Ian Bell, possibly a Joe Root type guy, it would be language that I would less use. I wouldn't use that on such a frequent basis with those guys, because I want them to be able to feel as if they're floating, as if they're not necessarily as grounded, and they're gonna move their shoulder and head into the line of the ball a little bit more.
And that's the key, isn't it? Language that engages people and gets the message across, what you're trying to say to someone that they can understand, and that will change between people. So I guess that's another key point, is it's not necessarily about the drills, it's also about how you're explaining something to someone and what message you're trying to give them and how they interpret that.
And it's the good one is that you know, sometimes you're not going to know which is going to hit, but if you give them both a go, you'll see which one they connect to most. If you're really watching, if you're really listening to what they're saying, then they'll give you the message about which one of those they prefer. So the more attention you can have with your player and on your player when you give them a verbal cue to see whether it's an effective one that's worthwhile sort of revisiting again, or whether there's another way of explaining the same thing.
And that is just about all we've got time for on the show this week. There is one more thing that we need to do before we leave, and that's decide on the winner of this week's competition. It's the online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com. And the two people up for the prize this week are Matt and his question about changing the mindset of players, and Trevor and his question about balance while batting. So which one did you prefer this week, Gareth?
Well, firstly, I reckon they're the best combination of questions we've had in ages. So well done, fellas. Really, really brilliant. And you sort of get a sense that these guys are actually coaching. You know, they're coaching a lot, aren't they? And they're really wanting to apply whatever we speak about as a result of their question in their next coaching session. And, thanks very much to both Matt and Trevor for the questions this week. And probably because we don't get so many questions about balance, I'm going to go with Trevor's question this week. I think it was a fantastic question, and one that we haven't talked about significantly over the last few months. So all yours, Trevor.
Well done, Trevor. Online coaching course for you, and there's some good ones there that will help with some drills and things on balance, so make sure you have a look at that. Gareth, if someone else was listening to the show and they wanted to send in their question and have their chance to win the prize, how could they get in touch with us?
They could give us a call on 0203 239 7543 or drop us an email on coach@pitchvision.com.
That's correct. You can also get us on social media. You can find us on the PitchVision social site. If you go onto pitchvision.com and do a search in the Find People section on the top corner there, you'll be able to find us. If you use one of the other social media platforms, Facebook is available, and so is Twitter, facebook.com/PitchVision Academy and @PitchVisionAcad. If you want to get the show from the PitchVision website, you can do that by heading over to pitchvision.com/podcast, or you can subscribe to the show in your favourite pod-catching app. That's all for this week. We hope you listen next week, but until then, have a good week. Cheers, Gareth.
Cheers, fellas.